Welcome to Movie Speeching once more. The Untouchables, a 2011 biographical comedy drama film, is what I'll be showing you today. Spoilers ahead. Enjoy and have fun. Driss is chauffeuring his boss Philippe through Paris one late night. When standing in queue for traffic becomes too monotonous, Driss exceeds the posted limit and starts driving very quickly while dodging other vehicles and disregarding traffic signs. The police start to pursue him as a result, and Driss wagers €100 that he can escape with them. However, after driving beneath a bridge, the police finally catch up with him by ambushing them from both sides. However, Driss doesn't appear overly concerned, and this time he stakes €200 on his ability to secure them an escort. He starts acting up when the police force him out of the car, acting irritated and claiming them he was driving Philippe to the hospital because he couldn't move. When the officers approach Philippe, they witness him convulsing, which is also an act, and they also discover the wheelchair inside the truck as evidence. The police excuse Driss for exceeding the speed limit and drives them away. This friendship has been going on for a while. Interviews are being conducted by Philippe and his assistant Magalie to find a new carer for him, but things aren't going well because all of the candidates have very generic or odd responses to the interview questions. However, they are startled when Driss barges in, disregarding the fact that it isn't nearly his turn, because he just needs some paperwork signed stating that they won't hire him so he can receive unemployment benefits. Although he is frank and a little harsh, even making advances towards Magalie, Philippe finds him entertaining and invites him to return the next day to pick up his completed documents. Driss returns to his modest home in the neighborhood and tries to take a bath as his younger siblings bother him. He only succeeds in finishing in time thanks to his older sister Mina, who is more responsible. He sees his brother Adama getting out of a strange automobile as he waits for his mother to arrive via the window. Driss is even more certain that the lad is up to no good when he enters the flat and just states that he was at school before taking his bag and leaving once more. His mother shows up in the evening, and when she asks, he gives him a Fabergé egg that he stole and claims to have been on vacation. However, she is not pleased to see him because he went missing for 6 months and didn't call, and now he has popped out of nowhere as if her house were a hotel. She throws him out and warns him not to return because she is so fed up with all of his lies and she has other kids to take care of. Driss spends the evening socializing with some neighbors while smoking and eating some goodies. The housekeeper, Yvonne, welcomes Driss when he returns to Philippe's residence the following day to pick up his paperwork. And Yvonne, the housekeeper, welcomes him. She gives him a tour of the property, describes Philippe's daily activities, and shows him the room with his own bathroom that he will have. Driss can't help but stare at the bathtub. Philippe offers Driss a bet that he won't last more than 2 weeks after he accepts the 1-month trial. Having brought his belongings to his room, Driss is instructed on how to care for Philippe. He has to learn how to put him in the wheelchair, keep his legs active, and assist him with bathing and getting dressed. Things become unpleasant when Driss learns that he must put on some high stockings and even clean his butt after Philippe uses the loo, but despite his protests and vows to refuse, he eventually accepts those duties as part of his employment. Later that night, when he's munching on a snack on the roof, Philippe's daughter Elisa and her boyfriend Bastien, who are looking for a private place to make out, interrupt him and demand that he share his drink. He then kicks them both out. Even if he initially makes mistakes that he learns from, Driss rapidly adapts to Philippe's daily schedule, like forgetting the baby monitor while taking a bath or handing Philippe the phone instead of placing it on his ear. The majority of the letters he opens for Philippe, but there are a number of private ones he isn't permitted to look at. He also learns to organize his mail into distinct files. In contrast to Philippe's advice, he chooses to make a file just for advertisements for female escorts after finding one. But this new life is not all work. Driss nevertheless makes sure to enjoy himself. He keeps trying to make out with Magalie and occasionally invites escorts to join him in bed. After calling him out for being late one morning, Yvonne enters his room and discovers some potentially harmful items in his backpack without saying anything about them. Philippe needs to be driven around today, but Driss refuses to load him into a truck like he's cargo. Instead, he takes Philippe in one of the posh automobiles that rarely get used. Philippe, who initially believes this is inappropriate and advises them to be practical, is soon becoming enthusiastic at the prospect of a faster, less monotonous journey, despite Yvonne's continued disapproval. When they attempt to exit the premises, a neighbor is already parked there, defying the warning sign posted on the door. Driss doesn't waste any time in pursuing the man, grabbing him by the front of his shirt and yelling at him until he moves the car. His deeds impress Philippe, but Yvonne disapproves once more. The two visit a museum where Philippe intends to purchase a work of art that Driss believes is unworthy of the money because it is merely a red splotch on the canvas. Afterward, when Philippe meets with a relative of his, he learns that Driss is the subject of widespread concern because of his aggressive tendencies. He has also learned that he has a criminal history, but Philippe doesn't care because Driss doesn't feel sorry for him and enjoys making jokes with him. Driss and Yvonne have dinner in the kitchen while Philippe dictates a letter to Magalie after another failed attempt to hit on her. Yvonne switches off the baby monitor, saying it's a private talk, and starts outlining what's happening. The letters Philippe wouldn't allow Driss open were from a woman named Eleanor, with whom he has penned friends. But he has never actually met Eleanor, their communication is only through letters. Speaking of love, Driss makes fun of Yvonne for getting frequent stares from the gardener before bed. He's trying to fall asleep when the baby monitor starts making strange noises. Philippe is having problems breathing. Driss enters his room to calmly guide him through the attack with calming words and a wet cloth to wipe his face since he can't ignore him, no matter how hard he tries. Philippe ultimately nods off, but a few minutes later he wakes up once more claiming he needs air. This time, Philippe is placed on the wheelchair by Driss, who immediately wraps him in blankets and takes him for a stroll by the river. Philippe tells Driss that this is the first time in a very long time that he has seen Paris at night and that he occasionally feels phantom agony because the medication can only do so much for him. Philippe also acknowledges that, due to his circumstances, he is unable to sexually assault a woman. However, because his ears are sensitive areas, he can still get some gratification while having them massaged. Driss shares one of his joints with Philippe, who is initially dubious but ends up liking it as the phantom agony threatens to return. They then head to a restaurant where they have dinner together and crack jokes. And Philippe decides to continue telling his tale. His wife and he met while they were both students, and soon after they were wed, she suffered 5 miscarriages and was identified as having a fatal, incurable condition. They adopted Elisa at that point. A paraglider satisfied Philippe's love of competitiveness, extreme sports, and speed. Even though he still believes that living without his wife is his true handicap rather than the chair, he crashed and broke his vertebrae while paragliding due to bad weather. After some more banter, Philippe recalls the time and understands that Driss has successfully completed his 1-month trial and is now officially employed. But he must first return the Faberge egg he took from his wife because she would have given it to him every year, and he now possesses exactly 25 of them, which corresponds to the length of their marriage. The following day, Driss approaches Mina as she is leaving school. She is a little miffed that he hasn't responded to her messages other than to ask her to seek for the egg, and she also informs him that the police have been calling their house. He then goes to see Adama, who admits that he was discovered to be carrying 30 grams. Adama declines Driss' offer to take him out to lunch and boards the same unreliable vehicle as previously. Driss is then permitted to watch as Philippe dictates a letter to Magalie on behalf of Eleanor. He finds Philippe's purple prose to be extremely dull and feels that he should be more direct. He is also perplexed to learn that this has been going on for 6 months with no image exchange. He interprets it as a sign when he sees her phone number on one of the letters and phones her, forcing Philippe to pick up the phone and finally speak to her verbally. Since their talk goes so well, Philippe calls her frequently now, even before he and Driss go to the opera, where Driss giggles and makes fun of the clothes. Following day, Driss persuades Philippe to agree to a photo exchange with Eleanor and picks a shot of him using a wheelchair. Elisa then barges into his room while he is painting to ask for cigarettes and mocks him for trying to be creative. He gets upset and throws her out before going to meet Philippe, who is now requesting that Yvonne replace the selected image with one of him when he wasn't quadriplegic. Just before Driss stormed in, ranting about Elisa and insisting that Philippe should punish her, a position Yvonne shares, she hid the photo inside the escort file. Philippe consents to speak with her, but he is largely taken aback when Driss reveals that he has been painting. The time goes by, and Philippe and Driss' friendship deepens. Philippe buys him his first suit and chastises his daughter while Driss listens to him on the baby monitor. Driss takes him outside to play in the snow and takes him with him when he goes for a run. Driss exhibits his first picture to Magalie after finishing it, but she slaps him away when he tries to kiss her. However, Philippe claims he will make an effort to sell the painting since he enjoys it. The two of them like spending time together and doing fun things like sharing weed, getting faster cars, and even hiring escorts. When Philippe's birthday finally arrives, he isn't overly enthusiastic. Each year, he puts on a shocked face when he learns that they are hosting a party and that he must meet with so many distant relatives who only visit him on the date to make sure he is still alive. It will all be quite dull, according to Philippe. Driss searches for Elisa in her room while he and the other guests listen to some live classical music. Elisa is crying after taking some of Yvonne's medicines, which didn't kill her as she had feared. She wants Driss to speak with Bastien, who she believes is the cause of her sadness because he dumped her and called her a tart. Driss agrees to do so for a fee. Meanwhile, when Philippe shows his relative the artwork by Driss, the relative agrees to purchase it for 11,000 euros from Philippe. When Driss returns to the dining area, Yvonne tells him that although Magalie is in a relationship with Fred, things are now pretty difficult. This information gives Driss optimism. Philippe forces Driss to listen to some of the most significant pieces of classical music history as the celebration starts to wind down, but he can only chuckle in response. He brings his iPod and plays Boogie Wonderland by Earth, Wind and Fire after the band has finished playing before he starts dancing in the middle of the floor. He is a fantastic dancer, and Philippe enjoys seeing him get the other party members to dance with him as well. Driss reads the most recent letter Eleanor wrote to him later as he is putting Philippe to sleep. She sends him a picture of herself, which reveals that she is quite attractive, and suggests that they meet up when she visits Paris the following week. On the actual date, Yvonne and Driss try on dozens of costumes for Philippe before settling on the ideal one. Since Yvonne will be driving Philippe to the date, Driss visits Bastien on his day off and threatens to leave unless the young man agrees to apologize to Eliza and bring her croissants every day. He also requests that he style his hair. He then pays a brief visit to his mother at work, but merely to observe her from a distance. Eleanor is really late, so Yvonne and Philippe are waiting for her at the restaurant. Philippe gives up after an hour of waiting, asks Driss to take him away, and then exits the restaurant without realizing Eleanor is also arriving at the same time. The following evening, Driss receives the proceeds from the sale of the photograph from Philippe in his personal aircraft, making him incredibly delighted. The following morning, when they are in the countryside, Philippe decides to go paragliding and drags Driss along. Driss doesn't want to get involved. Yet after initially panicking out, he really finds the experience to be enjoyable. Adama is waiting for Driss when they arrive home and gets chastised when he notices the scars on his face. Though Adama continues to refuse to tell Driss what is going on in his life, the doctor makes him wait in his room while he contacts Mina to reassure her and puts Philippe to bed. But Philippe hasn't yet fallen asleep. He asks Driss about his family after forcing him to gaze at a painting alongside him. At first, Driss resists the question, but eventually yields. It turns out that legally, Adama isn't his brother, and his parents, who are actually his aunt and uncle, aren't his parents. His original name is Bakary Baysari, but because other children had that name, they nicknamed him Idris, which later became Driss. They brought him back from Senegal when he was 8 because they were unable to have children. When his uncle passed away, there were other men and more children, and one day his aunt suddenly became pregnant. Philippe points out that Adama needs to be disciplined, just as Driss had spoken to him about Elisa, so he fires Driss so he can be with his family because he can't spend his entire life caring for an elderly guy. The following morning, after Bastien has delivered his daily croissant and changed his hairstyle, Driss prepares to go by packing his baggage. When Driss makes one more attempt to woo Magalie, she introduces him to his significant other Fred, which is short for Frederic. It turns out that Magalie isn't interested in men, and Driss immediately gives up. Giving the baby monitor back to Yvonne as he leaves the house, he makes fun of her for lying to him about Magalie to play a practical joke on him. She gives him the escort file he had begun in exchange, and he is unhappy to see that the image he had selected is hidden inside. Although Driss discards the file, he keeps the picture for himself. Once outside, he discovers a car blocking the entrance once more. Despite the fact that the driver no longer works there, he requests that he move the car. Driss claims that it is a question of principle when Adama calls him out on it. In the meantime, Philippe is eating his first meal with his new babysitter, who is stuffy and monotonous, and chooses to leave without even taking a mouthful. A few hours later, the two brothers go pick up their mother at the station. Meanwhile, back at the house, no one is around to chastise him because Yvonne is out on a date with the gardener. Driss returns to his previous lifestyle as time goes on. He rejoins his old buddies and urges the men in the suspicious automobile to stop bothering Adama. He succeeds in impressing the interviewer when he attends one for which he lacks the necessary expertise by referring to himself as pragmatic and making use of all the art knowledge he picked up while working for Philippe. As a result, he is hired as a driver. Philippe is still in a terrible attitude and continues to detest his new carer. When he refuses to accept help from anyone in the house one night, Yvonne phones Driss and asks him to come over. They initially discover themselves in this circumstance in that way, after which the police pursued them and later escorted them to the hospital. Following that little journey, Driss takes Philippe to the coast, where he is able to relax after seeing the water. Later, Driss trims Philippe's excessive beard and takes him to a restaurant for lunch, but he leaves early because Philippe will have company today from someone else. Philippe begins to worry about being alone until he realizes who his date is, Eleanor, who is overjoyed to see him and doesn't mind the chair at all. Driss wishes him luck and eventually gives him back his egg before departing. The actual Count Philippe Pozzo di Borgo, who has remarried and has 2 daughters, currently resides in Morocco. The real Driss, who goes by the name Abdelyasmin Selou, is married with 3 kids and has his own business. Even today, the friendship between the two men is still quite strong.